Welcome to Sharp or Square, presented by Hard Rock Bet. We are part of the Volume Podcast Network. This is the show that makes the square sharper, makes the wise guys pay attention. I am Chad Millman. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, my BFF, my companion, my compadre, professional bettor, Simon Hunter. Hello, Simon.
Chad, so much going on. Where do we start, brother?
Dude, it's going to be a rough week for me because I go to bed at 9 o'clock. So no joke, last night from 7 to 8, I was reading a book. Just before that, I got a little sleepy. I took a nap from like 7 to 8 so I could stay up for the entirety of the Spurs Knicks game. And it was worth every second because the game was freaking awesome. I'm pumped that we're going to have Jason Timpf from Hoops Tonight come on today to talk about it. But dude, great game. Great fucking game. These guys are ridiculous. Jalen Brunson, what he can do as a 6-something guard in comparison to Wemby as a 7'4" athlete is, tell me you watched it. Tell me you loved it.
I did. I won't lie. I was watching the Phillies to start, though. So I caught the second half. I haven't mentioned his name because I don't want to be the guy that drinks it, but I'm sure you know Christopher Sanchez, this Phillies pitcher.
Yeah, dude.
Pretty insane run. I didn't want to. People were asking why I didn't bring it up, and it's like I am so superstitious. It's over now. He gave up a run last night, but he basically set MLB record for most innings without giving up a run. Didn't give up a run the entire month of May. So yeah, I was watching that. That finish, switched over and watched that insane comeback by that Knicks team. And yeah, it's as fun as it was watching the finals. I really can't wait for it to get back to Madison Square Garden. Like, I really can't. Like, the fans, I get it, San Antonio, it's the rich people buying the seats, right? It's just going to be a different atmosphere. But I just felt like they were gone by midway through the third quarter. There was just nothing from the fans. They didn't will that team at all. And yeah, props to the Knicks, right? The game they had to go steal, they win stole. So yeah, I can't wait to go break this game down. And just the rest of the series, it's going to be a really good one.
Knicks win by 10, 105-95. Score does not show how close the game was. We're going to bring in Jason Timpf. We're going to talk all things betting in the NBA Finals with our Volume Podcast brother. He is the hardest working man in basketball media. He's going to go on with our buddy Cowherd today from Hoops Tonight. Jason Timpf, how are you, buddy?
What's up, guys? It's good to see you. I am sorry that we had to reschedule on Tuesday. I got my absolute butt kicked by an illness, but I'm back on my feet now. And honestly, like, I think this series is a win for basketball fans. I think this is between the Knicks, obviously being a super interesting storyline, and Victor Wembanyama and everything he brings to the table. And I think either team winning is profoundly interesting. And there's so many storylines on the inside of the lines, like you talked about, Chad, involving like this weird dynamic between this 6 foot tall, unbelievable clutch scoring force versus this alien 7.5 feet tall, just do a little bit of everything monster. It's just a very interesting series. And I thought last night's game was super entertaining. And you mentioned Simon, the Knicks fans traveled really well to San Antonio. Every time they made a play, I'm like, oh man, like there's a pretty hefty, that was by far the biggest road presence of any Spurs game this year.
I love this Knicks team. I find them so likable, but I hate the Knicks. I mean, it's weird to me.
You got to think of them as Villanova. Just think of them as Villanova. I know, but honestly, that's what I'm doing, John. I'm lying to us. I'm like, well, this is Villanova.
Dude, I'm having a really hard time with it. And I don't feel this kind of visceral hate for really any other teams. Like, I should hate the Cardinals as much as I hate the Knicks. I should hate the Packers as much as I hate the Knicks. But I hate the Knicks. And I don't know if it's like James Dolan is such a douchebag and I don't want this guy to be rewarded. I don't know if it's like I find Knicks fans
It's the fans.
Insufferable.
It's the fans.
But what's like last night I'm in bed watching the end of the game and my wife, who's a New Yorker, is like cheering them on. And I've got a text chain with all my other buddies who are specifically from New York, from Staten Island, who grew up with my wife, who are all dudes and all very good friends of mine. And they are going crazy. And I have been fighting with these guys about the Knicks and the Bulls since the 90s, and they're getting their chance now. And I'm not even happy for them. Like, but MSG, I've said this before on the show, Jason, when MSG and those fans are cheering defense, it is the most electric feeling in sports. And I got to give them props for that, because it is really, really wonderful. And that it's such a New York thing to chant defense, and the Knicks are a city team. I admire the fans for that, but outside the stadium, I fucking can't stand them.
I've seen teams pump in a fake defense chant too, and it's just,
need it there
on the broadcast. You're like, "Ew, what are you guys doing?" That just doesn't work for me. But yeah, there's an electricity in that building that really has been there, I think, on and off over each of the last 3 playoff runs, but it's just reaching a crescendo under the circumstances. Like I picked the Knicks to win this series beforehand. I think they match up extremely well with San Antonio for some of the reasons that we'll dig into. But like, this was the path that was there the whole time, which was if you can somehow get out of the Eastern Conference, and if San Antonio is the team that happens to be waiting for you, if you get there, you have a great chance to win the title. Because like, you know, the Knicks are, it's super fascinating because they've been super dominant. Like I think last night was their 12th consecutive playoff win. They've won by double figures in the vast majority of those games. Last night was double figures too, although I think that's a little misleading because the Spurs had a lead with just a couple minutes left. It was more of just the way that the game went off the rails late. But like they've dominated their way through this stretch. But a big part of it has been like it's been like a combination of not only are the Knicks playing extremely well, Brunson's playing amazing, Cat's playing amazing. Mike Brown has gotten more out of this team's bench than they've gotten out of the bench in any of the recent seasons. All those things are true, but you also have like some favorability in the way that the matchups have kind of broken down with them getting a 7 seed after beating the 6 seed, and then getting that Cavs team that effectively quit after losing game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals, and then getting a team in San Antonio, which matches up really well for them. But like every team that's ever won the title has gotten some luck along the way, whether it be through matchups, whether it be through injuries. Like that's just part of the deal. The Thunder last year got lucky with injuries on their way to the title. So did the Celtics the year before. Like it's just part of basketball. And you know, the big thing is they're just extremely likable. Like they're just an extremely likable brand of basketball on both ends of the floor. And even the storylines, like this Cat storyline, like can you imagine if Cat got a Finals MVP? Like what that would look like, you know, just a few years after his mother passed away. Like it just is rife with a bunch of like people you really want to root for.
I'm such a bad person. You just mentioned Cat's mother. It just reminded me that after the Knicks beat Cleveland, a good friend of mine who's from New York and is a massive Knicks fan, and his sister, who I'm also good friends with, they were moving their mom into assisted living from the house she had lived in for a long time. And I texted them like, you know, good luck today, you know, sending you guys lots of love, thinking about you guys. I know it's a hard day. And they sent back, you know, just updates of what was happening and thank you for thinking of us and all this kind of stuff. And then at the end, I couldn't let it go. Instead of being like, you know, let me know how it goes. And I just wrote back, by the way, fuck the Knicks. Like, that's my state of mind on the Knicks, even though you're right. They're so freaking likable. I think if Cat and Brunson win this title, they've secured a path to the Hall of Fame. We're not going to get ahead of ourselves. I only say that because I was at the NBA, the Cup, when the Spurs played the Knicks, and I was sitting with a buddy, and I was saying like how many, when Brunson and Cat and Wembanyama were on the floor, I said, how many Hall of Famers do you think are on the floor right now? And he was trying to convince me that Cat and Brunson should be it. I wasn't buying it, but I think if they do get to they win this finals, they'll get there. Last night, Spurs are up by 13 in the middle of the third quarter. They fade late, lose by 10. Jason and Simon, like from a betting perspective, from a basketball perspective, Jason, we'll start with you, basketball. Like, what is your biggest game 1 takeaway? Because when we talked about Thunder and Spurs, you were pretty optimistic about the Spurs and I was less optimistic. And so I was actually thinking about this last night, knowing you were coming on today.
Yeah, I if the Thunder would have made the finals, I would have picked the Thunder. And the main reason why is the Thunder are a speed team and the Knicks are more of a power team. And I think they match up better in that sense. Whereas the Spurs are a power team and the Knicks have the power players to cancel out that advantage. The primary difference is Dylan Harper and Steph Castle consistently were able to get 2 feet in the paint whenever they wanted against that Thunder defense because they're constantly going against these like kind of smaller guards. And on the other end of the floor, there was no ability for the Thunder to punish those Spurs perimeter players. In fact, that was kind of the story of the series is Shea looked a little physically overwhelmed by those guys throughout. And what makes this matchup so fascinating is Karl Anthony Towns is both a good matchup for Wemby in the sense that he can guard him like we saw last night. He can win the battle on the ground. He's quick enough to beat him to spots and physically strong enough with a low enough center of gravity to kind of push him off of any sort of driving lane and keep him from getting any deep post position or deep paint touch, if that makes sense. But the flip side of it is on the other end of the floor, there's not a single guy in the Spurs rotation that can guard Cat other than Wemby. Like all of those guards and wings that they play are giving up 4 or 5 inches, 40, 50 pounds, every single one of them. And then if you put Wemby on him, one of two things goes wrong. Either, Wemby, for all the credit he deserves for being legitimately the best defensive player in the league, he's actually not a fundamentally sound defender. He is getting by purely off of raw talent right now. I'd argue even on offense, which is crazy because the dude's the best player in the world and he's just getting by on raw talent as a 22-year-old right now. Wait till he starts to polish some of these things up and add some more refined process. But he was terrible against ISOs all year. This like Wemby, for being literally the best defender in the league, he was one of the worst isolation defenders in the league. The reason why is he always overplays the three-point shot. He gets super aggressive forward and then dudes drive right around him. And he had a really hard time with Cat last night, like picking him up 25 feet from the basket with all this intense ball pressure. And it's like, what are you doing? Chill out. All Cat has to do is just low rip through and he's right around you and he's getting to the basket for a layup. And so I still think ultimately the best pathway for the Spurs is for Wemby to guard Cat, but he's going to have to make some tactical adjustments there, give him a little bit more space, use your length to contest rather than trying to smother him 25 feet from the basket. But Cat is really the breaking point from a matchup standpoint because Wemby doesn't even really guard him well. But if you take Wemby off of him and put him on Josh Hart, Cat just feasts on these smaller guards. He had all those offensive rebound putbacks and like easy drives in other stretches of the game. And then on the other end of the floor, he's appropriately guarding Wemby and playing him into arguably his worst offensive game of this postseason. So like they have a great matchup for Wemby and Cat. Jalen Brunson, all you have to do is get the game close late. Yeah, he was not efficient. He had 31 shots for his 30 points. He honestly, most of the points he did have came in transition too. It's not like Brunson was getting good looks for himself, but he just made a few big plays late in the game. He hits that big jump shot over Devin Vassell, draws the double team that gets the foul for Mikal Bridges, has the 3 off of the offensive rebound in the right corner. He just made a handful of big plays. But Cat to me is like, and from a betting standpoint, I'm wondering if you're seeing this too, Simon. Like, I don't know what the line is for Cat Finals MVP. But I would be looking at that as a potential value opportunity here because I think he really is the guy that breaks the Spurs on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, I was gonna say the first thing that jumped out to me is just the NBA. I feel like it's my biggest lesson from the Jordan era is just the NBA. You have to earn it. You don't get it early, right? It feels like Wemby might be hitting that thing, which I thought he was going to against OKC, which is like, okay, it's not your time yet. And that's what the first thing that jumped out to me this game is they just feel so young. They're relying on so many young players on San Antonio where the Knicks have guys who have been on multiple teams, the guys who have been at the lowest points of their careers, right? Like literally teams gave up on plenty of these guys and moved along. I mean, every time you say Cat, I will always think of the Jimmy Butler story. For the rest of my life, I will think of Jimmy Butler making him feel less than a man because that's what the NBA is, right? It's grown men that are there to humble you. And that's what that game felt like, where the Knicks looked rested. The Spurs looked like a team that went to a game 7. You could say, well, they had a couple of days off. Yeah, emotionally taxing what they did to that body, that series. To me, that's why that 10 points into that fourth quarter. That was a big deal. The fact that they won by over 10 points just shows, it was a little wonky at the end there. Like Brunson was hitting shots, the Spurs weren't, but at the same time, it was the energy level. Like them stealing the ball, the mental mistakes the Spurs were making. So, yeah, that jumped out to me right away, where it's like watching that second quarter. Obviously, I didn't see the whole first half, but I saw the second quarter, and it's like, okay, the Spurs looked in control. The third quarter looked totally different. They looked like they were behind, and the Knicks looked like they already made adjustments in game that they were taking advantage of. So that's what I love about basketball. It's these little adjustments where you have 5 guys on the floor, but that's what these guys get paid all this money for. They find your weakness and they're going to exploit it, whatever their strength is of this matchup. And, we're all on the same page, right? The Spurs are nowhere near dead yet, right? There's still a ton left to play. I think most of us agree this feels like it's going to go 6 or 7. Like Wemby played terrible. They still almost won that game. So I really am excited about this series, and I'm kind of torn here. It feels like the value probably has shifted at this point to the Spurs, right? Everyone's going to overreact to that first game. I'm always looking for the value. So yeah, I'd be really tempted tonight or tomorrow night to take the Spurs. Just you expect them to bounce back and the Knicks to have a letdown game. It's just so hard to win back-to-back on the road, let alone a team like the Spurs. We've seen they take Wemby's personality. They become crazy. Like there's a team that was down 3-2 to OKC, and they came back against the champs. So I'm so excited for this series. I think it's going to be great.
One thing I want to say, Jason, before you dip in there, you had asked about Karl Anthony Towns MVP. He was 20-1. Now he is 12-1. Hard Rock Bet actually has the best price in the market at him to win MVP in terms of making your money back. Let's do a quick word from Hard Rock, because Simon, you make up a great point about is there value now on the Spurs? And I want to transition to what we learned from last night into the upcoming games. Today's show is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet, Florida's sports book. The NBA Finals are here. The lights are brighter. The pressure is higher, and every possession can define a legacy. Despite my feelings about New York fans, I could not be more excited about this matchup. Will New York end its title drought? Will San Antonio hang another championship banner? However you see it playing out, head over to Hard Rock Bet and turn your picks into a payday. The season is almost over, so shoot your shot while you can, and same game parlays let you stack your picks for an even bigger payout. Try your first bet on Hard Rock Bet today, and you can score $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you get not only your winnings, but also an extra $150 in bonus bets. But the welcome offer is just the tip. Hard Rock Bet has new promos daily. And sure, Hard Rock Bet is Florida's only legal sportsbook, but you don't have to be in Florida to join the party. Hard Rock Bet is also live in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, Colorado, and Michigan. More states on the way. Download the Hard Rock Bet app today, and let's get the party started. All right, Jace. Knicks are 5.5-point underdogs in game 2. The total is 214.5. I think Simon said something really smart a second ago. The Knicks looked like, and this is my kid and I were talking about this morning. The Knicks looked like grown-ups in the middle of that third quarter. Wemby goes out, Cat takes over, but their size and strength, it's like they were playing with grown man strength, and the Spurs were playing with sort of developing strength. How do you think all of this manifests itself in game 2?
So interestingly enough, even though I do think the Spurs will win game 2, I think it's on the table that the Knicks win again. There were a lot of things from that game that didn't go the Knicks' way. Like Josh Hart didn't really have anything going offensively. Early in the game, I thought the Knicks missed some really clean looks as they were a little bit rusty. And honestly, like Simon talked about it, speaking of the adjustments, like they allowed just 33 points to the 32 points to the Spurs over the final 20 minutes of that game. Once they went up 63-20, that was with 8 minutes left in the third quarter. They finished with 95 points. Like they just straight up didn't score over the course of the final 20 minutes of that game. There are certain things that I expect the Spurs to adjust They torched the Thunder, or excuse me, they torched the Knicks in the regular season with this action where they would have Wemby come off of wide screens from Brunson's man. So they'd have Champagnie, who's usually the guy Brunson's guarding, just go set a screen for Wemby coming out of the corner, and they'd get some good stuff. For whatever reason, they just didn't do that last night. They kind of stuck with the same offensive approach they had against the Thunder. They did have a play late in the game where they ran a pick and roll for Wemby, but instead of trying to shoot in the first 2 seconds, they patiently waited and swung the ball around. And because Wemby rolled, he had deep post position, because that's like, you don't have to run a pick and roll just to get a shot. Sometimes you can do it just to alter the geometry of the floor a little bit. They ran a pick and roll. Wemby ended up having 2 feet in the paint, post entry, just turned right over his right shoulder and drew a foul on Cat. Like, there are things that the Spurs can do to generate better shots. Vassell can shoot better. Fox can shoot better. They definitely have a lot of things that they can do better. I do believe that they'll win game 2. I just look at that like 5.5 number, and I'm like, I also wouldn't be surprised if it was another super close game, or if the Knicks did end up getting it done, because they do have their advantages. After last night, just felt more strongly about the Knicks winning the series. It's less about a team stealing a game. A team can steal a game because of weirdness. Anything can happen in an NBA playoff game. It's more to me that, like, I was worried about some very specific things for the Spurs, and all of those things came to fruition. That was what more specifically worried me. Like, that game looked eerily similar to the March 1st win that the Knicks had over the Spurs, which was a fascinating win because the Spurs won 11 straight games going into that game, and they won 5 straight games after. So it was a 17-game stretch where they went 16-1, and the one loss was a game where the Knicks beat the crap out of them in Madison Square Garden. And it was a lot of very similar stuff. Wemby had 7 turnovers because he kept trying to drive at Cat, and Cat was just walling him up, and guys were digging down and taking the basketball away from him. Jalen Brunson looked pretty comfortable getting to his spots. Karl Anthony Towns looked like he had size advantages all over the floor. OG Anunoby had moments where he was scoring. The Spurs guards really struggled to get anything going on offense. It was a lot of the exact same stuff. And that's what kind of scares me, is like, it's less about the fact that the Knicks stole game 1 and more about how they stole game 1. They stole game 1 by flexing their very specific advantages all over the floor. And the only reason why I'm not counting the Spurs out and not just saying the Knicks are going to run away and win this series is simply because Victor Wembanyama is just a completely different animal than any other player in the league, where he almost stole that game last night on a terrible night where he was playing like crap. He hits a step back 3 over Mitchell Robinson. He has like a foul on like a vertical spacing opportunity where he gets shoved in the back by Shamet. He has that rip through move on Cat where he gets the and one. Like, he almost through sheer force of will stole that game. And if it wasn't for Jalen Brunson getting that offensive rebound tap out for the 3, or hell, if De'Aaron Fox just doesn't foul Mikal Bridges on that little pull-up flash there in the middle of the lane, like, the Spurs could have still gotten it done. So, like, the real, like, ace in the hole here is, I still think Wemby's the best player in the series. I think it's if there's one reason to bet the Spurs in game 2, it's simply because, like, Wemby's mentality, is there any doubt that he's going to be awesome tomorrow night? Like, he's going to be awesome tomorrow night. Like, I think we're going to get 30 and 15 from him at least.
Or the flip side is, if De'Aaron Fox had made any of those mid-range jumpers at any point in the fourth quarter, I mean, he just could not buy a shot last night. This is a random question. Wemby's 7'4" and thin as a rail. Jason, in sort of the NBA universe, I never hear anybody talk about, what if Wemby puts on weight? What if Wemby adds more muscle? Like, does anyone talk about his body type not being able to add the kind of muscle that would make him even stronger? Or does that be something that people talk about? Because the guy already is so dominant. If he adds muscle and mass, it won't even be close to a fair fight anymore. Any conversation around Cat is irrelevant because he'll be as big.
So this is actually, I don't think it's a strength issue. I think it's a center of gravity issue. He is And like Cat is like literally the exact opposite of this, because Cat's like one of the few 7-footers in the league who just has like a low center of gravity. He just does. But like Wemby's center of gravity is just very high. And the example that I give is Anthony Davis as a counter. When was Anthony Davis at his best? In like 2020 or earlier, when he was this skinny, wiry, just freak talent that was hitting jump shots and anchoring everything on the defensive end of the floor? Or when he bizarrely bulked up into this like brick shithouse, part of my language there, over the course of the last couple of years, who frankly was slow and still wasn't really bullying anybody because he had a high center of gravity. So like he had this like huge upper body, but it's not like he turned into Shaq. He was still getting dislodged by Nikola Jokic and struggling to really impact games as like a bully ball player. So like with Wemby, I think his strength is in his mobility. And now that comes hand in hand with it. Like, will Wemby ever be able to just bully his way to the basket against the Karl Anthony Towns types? No, but I don't think he needs to be the best player, to be the best player that he can be. Like, there's going to be timely post play from him, specific types of matchups, like, game one against OKC, they guarded him with guards the whole time. Okay, so he has 40 and 20, right? Or, yeah, we ran this really good action that got him deep post position, kind of like we were talking about with the pick and roll earlier. Or, certain things on the offensive glass. He's going to have opportunities to use his length around the basket. But the truth of the matter is he's never going to be a bully ball player. His center of gravity is too high. Where he's going to have an advantage is in his height and in his mobility on the perimeter. So, like, for all the talk about the jump shots, like, he was actually a relatively efficient jump shooter in this postseason before last night. He was getting 0.95 points per attempt, which is like really solid in this playoff field. That's almost a point per shot. And at various points in the postseason, he's won games with his jump shooting, most famously in game one of the OKC series. But like, I think there's a lot of this like, oh, Wemby, he settles too much. Why doesn't he try to post up more? Where it's like, I actually think it's self-aware. It's just unpolished now. But he's never going to be a guy who's bullying through players that have lower centers of gravity. It's just, even if he does put on muscle, it's just not a battle he can win in terms of leverage.
You so perfectly answered my question. I love that you've thought about it. Knicks were plus 170 before game one to win the series, Simon. Now they are minus 140. The Spurs were minus 200. They are now plus 115. Let me give you some MVP numbers too, so you can take a beat and think about where the value might be from a professional point of view. Brunson for MVP, plus 200, minus 110. Wemby, minus 200, plus 120. I mentioned Cat. Castle has gone from 60 to 75 to 1. De'Aaron Fox is basically off the board. It's 75 to 250 to 1. Simon, where do you see the value right now? What are you hearing about the value as a better, even though NBA isn't your thing? Do you take a flyer on the Spurs at plus 115? Do you take a flyer on Wemby at plus 120 now that you're getting a little better number?
Yeah, I would say before the series, a lot of people were talking about Brunson and Wemby. That was pretty much the only two guys I think most people are betting. I am in total line with Jason here. I think Cat is the obvious choice, right? He's got the storyline with everything in his past, everything he's gone through, and the fact that he's shutting down potentially the most important player on the Spurs. That's everything. Like, he doesn't need to score the points. If he can just take Wemby out of the game, that's going to be such a huge talking factor, I think, in the media, especially the next 2 weeks, because these games are really spaced out. So a lot of these games is going to be just conversation in the media between the weeks, and that really dictates MVP, especially when it's not, you can say Brunson's a superstar of the Knicks. He's not your typical superstar, right? He's not that guy that's always all about me, dictating everything, wants to be the main person. Like, even in his interviews, he brings his own teammates on the stage with him. And, talking about Wemby and his weight, I do think it's like a KD thing, Chad, honestly, where it's like, it don't matter. Like, it's just the skill level's so high. Whatever his weakness is, he adapts to it. And in this matchup, I think he's going to adapt. I honestly thought he just looked tired. It just in that fourth quarter, that second half, he already had a rough first half, you could say, shooting wise. it just felt like he just looked so tired. Like Cat just put his body into him and wearing him down. The whole team did. The Knicks were just on him the whole game. So I don't know where Jason's at with it. I feel like there's no value at this point in the series. Like I really don't want to be betting the Spurs. I know that's where I said the value is. I'm in total agree with Jason. Like they could easily be down 2-0. And you've bet into two bad numbers if you've taken San Antonio. And to me, that's not the position. I think that Cat position, especially a Hard Rock, 12-1, that's crazy good value. Like to me, he should be closer to 7-1, 8-1. So I'm going to take that free money around the books are giving out his MVP odds.
Jace?
Yeah, so it's interesting because like I do think if the Knicks win, it's more likely that Brunson gets MVP just simply because of the easily tangible numbers and moments. Like he had 30 points last night. He hits the big shot late in the game. Like that is such easily digestible content, especially for some of the voting pool that we have. But we have seen, for the record, people get finals MVP before for defensive performance. Kawhi Leonard famously in 2014, Andre Iguodala famously in 2015, famously against the perceived best player in the world in LeBron James, kind of like Wemby is now. So like that works in Cat's favor, is like Cat is the primary defender on the guy that is the best player on the other team. It's less to me about like if you ask me which guy I think is more likely to win MVP if the Knicks win, it's obviously Brunson by some small margin. It's the value. 12-1 is such a ridiculous number to get a guy in Cat at who, like, I think frankly was their best player last night. So over the course of the series, if you just have fewer clutch games, more blowouts, the more blowouts, like let's say for instance the Knicks just win 3, 4, and 6. Like that's how they win the series. Spurs win tonight. Spurs win game 5. And in 3, 4, and 6, the Knicks win by 10 to 15 points in every game. And Brunson doesn't need to have clutch moments, which then shines a greater light on Cat's overall impact on both ends of the floor. I think 12-1 is fantastic value. As far as the series price goes, I would have put the Knicks at about minus 140 before the series. So them being minus 140 now at up 1-0, I think there's value on the Knicks there. Like I just think the Knicks are going to win. So like to me, like if you ask me to handicap the Knicks right now, I'd put them at like 2-1 probably. So to get them at minus 140, that's a pretty decent value in my opinion right now.
Do you feel like, how can you rank Jalen Brunson in his ability, you mentioned find his spot, to create offense in the way that KD can, right? Like there are certain guys in the NBA, they're just bucket getters. They're going to find a way to score. Jalen Brunson, he gets a lot of credit for his mastery of his footwork and his ability to use leverage on his opponents. But how would you rank him in terms of his ability to be just a professional bucket in the NBA right now? Because that might be why he doesn't get that superstar sort of acknowledgement. In addition to, he just seems like a much more humble guy who's not thinking about it that way.
You know, I got a question kind of similar to this, along these lines in my mailbag last night at the end of the show. But like, you know, Brunson's not as good as Giannis when he's at his best. He's just not. He's not as good as Luka. He's not as good as Wemby. He's not as good as Shea. He's not as good as Jokic. Like the top 5 guys are just so incredibly impactful in so many different ways that's kind of like, I'm not going to say an uncrackable list for Brunson, but like Brunson doesn't have a single first team All NBA selection. He doesn't have a single like real MVP finish. Like Brunson just is not on the level of those guys. I think he's the next guy. Like he's clear. Like I would take Brunson over Ant. I would take Brunson over Tatum at this point. Like Brunson has elevated above that group. He's kind of become the tag along guy on the top tier. Like he's not as good as the top tier guys, but he's clearly better than all the second tier guys. So he kind of operates in that gap in between the two as one of the better offensive players in the league, just not quite as all around impactful. But
can you believe Brunson that was the best American player? Like what you're saying now is blowing my mind. I never would have guessed that.
By the way, that's so true. Yeah. Jesus.
I love Ant. Is he as good at running an NBA offense as Brunson? No. And Ant is a very, very capable defender athletically, but he's not a disciplined defender. He makes all sorts of mistakes and cuts corners on that end all the time. He's one of the most maddening defenders I watch in film every single year. Like, Ant to me is typical for an early 20s guard in that he's just got a lot of like fat in his game that he's got to trim that in order to really be that level. Like, I think, like, if you ask me who's going to be better in 3 years, Brunson or Ant, obviously it's Ant. But like, I could not make a case for Ant over Brunson right now at this moment in time. Like, Brunson's just a better basketball player than him right now. Where it gets fascinating, to Chad's point, is this idea of just getting buckets. Because if you ask, now let's reframe the question. Instead of like, who is going to be the best player on my team for 82 games in a playoff run, which is the discussion that I was just having. Instead, let's say, I've got a basketball game with 4 minutes left and we're tied. Who's the best guy I can have on my team? In there, I would argue Brunson has a case to be number one. I don't know necessarily that I'd put him there. Like, it gets really dicey against like a Shea or a Luka, but like, you could make the case that the guy that should be number one there is that a cat that just walked in front of the screen? That was a giant cat too.
He has a massive, you talk about lower body strength, and Simon's version of cat is his cat.
I have a Great Pyrenees that's 110 pounds and is just like Snow White and long hair.
Oh my God.
Like, that looks like the Great Pyrenees of cats.
Yeah, that's a 20-pound Maine Coon. It's a big cat.
Man.
Yeah.
But anyway, to make a long story short, like, I think specifically in that late game situation, Brunson is arguably the best, and certainly in that top tier. If he's not in the top tier of stars for the entire NBA campaign, he is in the top tier of stars for guys in the final minutes. The one thing that's different between him and like a KD is KD just shoots over the top of you. Brunson has this magnificent combination of, like you said, Chad, the footwork and the skill, the touch, but it's also like the creativity. Like, he'll take awkward angles and awkward releases. He'll shoot with more arc or with less arc. He can shoot with both hands. He has like this variety of different finishing angles that make him like extremely difficult to guard in these situations, because those creative, audacious shots are almost impossible to be efficient with over a large sample. But they give you more optionality when it's like, I got 2 or 3 possessions here, guys, where I got to get a shot. And it's like the shot over Vassell is a classic example. Like, I thought I got him off his feet. I did, but he jumped straight up and down. He came straight back down in the same spot, so I couldn't draw the foul on him. But now I'm stepping through. I didn't get the call. I'm falling over. But hey, I can shoot a falling over, drifting sky bomb that just doesn't even touch the rim and falls purely through the net. Like, that's the classic example of the Brunson effect. Like, it's KD beats you just shooting right over the top because you can't do nothing about it. Brunson, it's all this creativity and audacity and like just everything looks a little bit different. It's very like, it very much feels like a 6-foot dude who doesn't have outstanding athletic traits, who's just squeezing every little advantage out of every little part of the game.
It's the dude who knows exactly every angle on the backboard and like frustrates those big players he goes against because he gets the shot off. They can't time it. They can't time their block because he gets the shot off about a millisecond before they would expect him to, before he's got that at the top of his jump or whatever it is. If he's driving the lane, like, it's just a little bit of trickery that is just brilliant. Jason, before we let you get out of here, because you got very important work to do today with the boss of the Volume Podcast Network, Colin Cowherd. You said you like the Knicks. I assume it's Knicks 6, Knicks 7, Knicks plus 700 in 7, Knicks plus 300 in 6. Where do you like the series, exact number of games, exact series score to land?
So I'm gonna go Knicks in 6. I think what'll end up happening is the Spurs will win game 2, and then the Knicks will win the 2 games in MSG. The Spurs will save their season at home in game 5, and then the Knicks will close them out in 6. That's what I think is going to happen. I have to ask you though, what is the line for a Knicks sweep? I know it sounds blasphemous, but I want to hear it.
Hold on, let me check that right now. I know Matt Mitchell's a very good producer. Plus 600 right now.
Plus 600.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a terrible line. Like,
Knicks
just hear me out. The Knicks haven't lost in, they've won what, 12 games in a row. they absolutely are capable of going in and winning tomorrow night. At which point, MSG is on fire for game 3. And then you have a young team down 3-0 and MSG. Like I said this on my show last night, I don't think it's going to happen, but like a sweep is like so on the table. And like you want to talk about a story, like how does that break the basketball world if the Knicks sweep back-to-back rounds, including sweeping the Spurs, and we have something like Karl Anthony Towns hoisting the Bill Russell Finals MVP trophy?
Amazing. The MSG is going to be on fire no matter what for game 3. I would recommend anyone who's going and is spending $25,000 a ticket just to sit in the 300 level at MSG, get there at 3 p.m. and hope they open the doors as quickly as possible. Because if Trump is going, as someone who went to the Indiana national title game where Trump was at, it took hours to get in, and that stadium allows 70,000 people. So MSG game 3 is just going to be a live fucking wire, and it's going to be so awesome to watch. Oh my God. Fucking Knicks. All right. That's our show. This has been Sharper Square, part of the Volume Podcast Network. Watch or listen on YouTube at Sharper Square. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, download us on Spotify, Apple Pods, wherever you get your pods. Rate, review, subscribe. Leave us 5 stars. Say whatever you want. Feedback is a gift. Until next time, love you.
You know, they had established a friendly wager before the series began. If the Pacers win, Spike Lee said he would cast Miller's wife, model Marita, in his next movie. If the Knicks win, Miller would visit Mike Tyson in prison.